opening up a retirement plan specifically made for self-employed people. You say, I don't want to have to deal with the 401k and all that rigmarole. That's okay. You don't have to. There are other plans out there specifically that will allow you to give more than a 401k will and allow your business to pay you more than a 401k plan. Think about it this way. If I go out and I see a piece of equipment, you think, well, it's brand new, I don't really need it, the equipment I bought last year is doing just fine, but I need to save on taxes. If I buy a new piece of equipment, that value is going to actually depreciate. But if I actually invest into a retirement plan, that money's not going to Uncle Sam, it's going to you. And then your business can match on that. So that is a part of investing right now in this time frame of the year that people really need to think about. You say, well, what if I'm not self-employed and I'm at home, working for a company or I'm working for someone else? There's also ways that you can do that too. IRAs are not just one plan you open up and you just put some money in it. There are so many opportunities with IRAs that people should take advantage of.
That's why it's good to ask questions if we don't know the answers, because that's what you're there for. And math, arithmetic, and chemistry, all those things, and high finance was way above my head, so I always had to depend on somebody.
Well, here's what's simple about it. What if I actually put my money in a retirement plan, and instead of paying 22% on taxes, I pay 15%? That's a 7% return.
I like that. I like that idea.
Can't find that at a bank.
No. I like that idea. You can contact Andrew Tisdale at this phone number, 287-9197, 287-9197, and the new address is?
233 Charlotte Road, Rutherfordton, North Carolina.
233 Charlotte Road, Rutherfordton, North Carolina.
28139.
28139. And you can reach him at www.edwardjones.com.
Yes, you can.
That's a good way to reach him. Better yet, to sit down and talk to him. He's a nice, friendly guy. He'll make you feel good about your income.
Y'all have a great day.
You have a good week.
See you.
See you next week. Andrew Tisdale with Edward Jones. And I'll be back in just a moment.
At Smith Drugs of Forest City, we are continue to offer the COVID-19 rapid testing and the COVID-19 vaccinations. Please call our pharmacy at 828-245-4591 with any questions or concerns that you may have. You may also visit our website at smithsdrugsfc.com and schedule your COVID rapid 19 test or your vaccination. Again, if you have any questions, please call our pharmacy at 828-245-4591.
It's that time again, time to get the flu vaccines. And Smith's Drugs in 4A City has the flu vaccinations available. Walk-ins Monday through Friday and Saturdays by appointment. And Smith's Drug is asking all their Dream Station and System 1 CPAP customers to call if you need any help with registering your recalled devices. Just call the Home Medical Department for any help or with questions at 828-245-4591. And Smith's Drugs has the Moderna and Pfizer initial shots and the boosters. They also have the flu vaccines at Smith's Drugs of 4A City.
Well, it's 11 minutes after 8 o'clock on this terrific Tuesday morning. Although it is dreary outside, it's going to be a bright day for somebody else around the neighborhood, so help make it that way. I've got news from here and there. It seems like things are beginning to open up, which I applaud. Loudly, people are beginning to take masks off and live in the real world again. Students began the week without mask requirement. On Monday, the first time in 2022, students and staff in Rutherford County were not required to wear a face mask in the classroom setting. Can you imagine how that must have felt for the kids and the students? In a special call meeting of the Rutherford County Board of Education Friday afternoon, February 18th, board members unanimously decided to make mask wearing optional. The decision was made as the COVID-19 situation has dramatically improved across North Carolina and the United States. Mandated mitigation measures are also being lifted throughout the region and the nation. Superintendent David Sutton said 10 days ago we anticipated that the landscape could change dramatically, but the improvements have taken place even more quickly than we anticipated. We have had great improvements according to our local COVID data. I believe the conditions are right for you to consider the face mask requirement, he told the board. Well, Board Vice Chairman Rick Ficklin said It's been a long 2 years of dealing with COVID pandemic. I will make the motion that beginning Monday, masks are optional for students and staff. Brandon Gosey seconded the motion. All who are present voted in favor of the motion. Board member Angel King was unable to attend the meeting. Sutton also received for the board the latest guidance from the Strong School NC Public Health Toolkit produced by the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services. Per the last recommendations, exclusions from school quarantine will no longer take place for people who show no symptoms of sickness or have not tested positive for COVID. Only those showing symptoms and or have a positive COVID test will be excluded. The exclusion period of time is usually 5 days. Previously, those who were exposed would face exclusion unless they took a rapid COVID test after school and tested negative. Sutton pointed out that close encounters with someone who may be sick will not lead to exposed person being excluded, independent of setting, vaccination status, or whether either party was masked or unmasked. While students and staff may be mask-free anywhere inside the school buildings or on school grounds, officials point out that on school buses, masks are still required at this time. This is a federal requirement and pertains to all school transportation buses. Officials said they expect that requirement may also be reconsidered by federal health authorities in the near future. Also, local school boards across the state have been required to vote each month on their mask policy. Officials expect the requirement will soon be rescinded, though it remains in place currently. All across the fruited plain, folks are beginning to recognize each other again, seeing the smiles on their faces, and be able to read lips as teachers are instructing, and students are able to better understand what's being read because they can not only hear but see the movement of the pronunciation of the words. Well, with this good news of things opening up, the popular South Mountain Christian Camp in Bostic has, like most organizations, suffered through the COVID-19 pandemic. According to an article in the Daily Courier, in summer 2020, in-person camp was canceled. Last summer, it operated on a more limited basis. This year, South Mountain Christian Camp leaders are hoping for a more normal summer season as many COVID restrictions have been lifted with the pandemic waning. Executive Director Steve Collins says we're super excited. He's asking parents of potential campers to make plans now so their child will have a spot this summer. South Mountain Christian Camp offers 6 one-week residential camp sessions for boys and girls from ages 7 to 15. Registration opens March 14th. Collins said summer camp can be expensive, but South Mountain Christian Camp guarantees that everyone can afford their program. Their policy is that no child will be turned down because they cannot afford to pay per camp. The fee is $220 per camper each week. The financial assistance program is available for those who cannot afford to pay the full cost per camp. Parents are asked to pay what they can reasonably afford. The rest is made up primarily through donations by individuals who sponsor campers in need. Collins urges parents and guardians to make this a great summer for the kids and mark the opening date because the registration fills up quickly each year. And it's going to be a good year for South Mountain Christian Camp, and we're so tickled that they're going to be able to operate on regular full speed ahead approach. Back to the idea of pandemic and how it's affected people. A research brief from curriculum publisher Amplify shows that elementary school students continue to lag behind in literacy almost 2 years into the COVID-19 pandemic. The mid-school assessment concluded that students in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade are the furthest behind compared to their pre-pandemic counterparts. Black and Hispanic students are bearing the brunt of those learning losses, with the literacy gap between minority students and white students larger than before the pandemic. The report noted that some progress is being made as students return to in-classroom instructions across the country. That progress is particularly evident in grades 3 through 5. But in a statement, Susan Lambert, the Chief Academic Officer of Elementary Humanities at Amplify, said the data in the report are a clarion call to help get students back on track in the earlier elementary grades. For the 2019-20 school year, 55% of kindergarten students were on track in literacy instruction, 58% in first grade, and 59% in second grade. For the 21-22 school year, those numbers dipped to 47% for kindergartens, 48% for first graders, and 51% for second graders. So there's been some bad things happen because the pandemic's affected people. Been out of school so much, had to wear masks so much, Zoom learning so much. It was difficult, and it's not done well for the students. 17 minutes after 8 o'clock, North Carolina House Speaker Tim Moore has ruled out a run for Congress in November. Now he says he hasn't found a final decision about his political future. He said sometime back he wasn't going to run. Now he said he's not sure. Moore said in a statement to McClatchan, "Many folks have continually asked me to consider running to represent our region of the state in Congress. I'm honored, but I am focused right now on getting these maps approved by the courts, fighting school mask mandates, and leading the House of Representatives. I will make a final decision once the maps are approved." A congressional map passed Thursday by the state Senate includes a toss-up district with Moore's home county of Cleveland. Importantly, the map also includes a more heavily Republican district to the west, one that might keep U.S. Representative Madison Cawthorn from changing seats. The proposed 14th Congressional District voted 50.8% for Republicans and 47.9% in 12 statewide races in 2016 and 2020, according to analysis compiled by the legislature. Such a tight spread might be enough to push Cawthorn back to his safer far western district rather than a potential primary against Moore. In addition to Cleveland County, the proposed 14th Congressional District includes all of Gaston County and parts of Mecklenburg and Rutherford County. Lawmakers have had 2 weeks to redraw the congressional districts after the North Carolina Supreme Court ruled that the map they enacted in November was unconstitutional and gave Republicans an unfair partisan advantage. The state's highest court gave lawmakers until Friday to come up with new districts that must be approved by the courts on February 23rd, which is tomorrow. Candidates filing begins February 24th, which is Thursday. Moore, as many of you know, is an attorney in Kings Mountain and joined North Carolina General Assembly in 2002. He is currently serving in his fourth term as House Speaker. It has long been rumored that Moore would run for Congress in 2022, and the overturned map included a district to make that possible. But Cawthorn announced in November that he would run there, and Moore immediately put out a statement that he was focused on his reelection as House Speaker in 2022 and would not run for Congress. Under the overturned map, Cawthorn's home district, while still leaning heavily to the right, had been diluted of Republican voters, making Moore's district more favorable for a Republican to win. Cawthorn said he would switch districts to make sure go along to get along, but Republican did win the election. Cawthorn is one of the few congressional candidates who filed in December to run before the Supreme Court abruptly ended the state's filing period to review the map. He is currently listed as running in the 13th district, the congressional district. Cawthorn will have until March 1 to withdraw his candidacy there. Both candidates have until March 4th to make a decision where to run. It's still up in the air, isn't it? Still toss-up. We'll see what happens because things will start opening up as people start signing up to run for election. If you like to run for an office locally or district-wise, now's the time to make that decision and get over to the Board of Elections come on Thursday and start filling that paperwork. The Sheriff's Report with Sheriff Francis comes up here in just a moment.
Stop in and visit Tanya and Rose at Foothills Family Hardware Store. With over 65,000 items in stock, they offer an extensive fastener section, including metric and chrome. They have outdoor bagged products, a vast assortment of soils and mulches. They also have a variety of locally handcrafted home decor, signs, and gifts for the entire family. Open 7 days a week, a family-owned business at 131 East Main Street in downtown Forest City. Call them at 245-6496. Extra parking is in the back. And Diva the Hardware Dog is anxiously awaiting your visit.
Diva the Hardware Dog is a great thing to go in and look at and pet. Very friendly dog. 22 minutes after 8 o'clock. If you've been there, you know that Anchor Down is the store to shop in. They have just, every week they get a new load in. As a matter of fact, just about every other few days they get a new load in. Here are some of the February deals. Clothes, 25 cents. Shoes, 50 cents. Coats, $1. Furniture, half price. Sure, the store is loaded and you might have to step around some specials, but it'd be worth it to get in and find out some really, these are new stuff. Anchordown is open Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday from 10 until 5. Don't be the one that misses these deals. At Anchordown, across from Carolina Chiropractic in downtown Forest City. Go in and look around. Tell them Jim sent you in there. Here now is Sheriff Francis.
Jim, in the last 24 hours, the Rutherford County Sheriff's Office has responded to 170 calls to service. There have been 20 arrests processed at the county jail. Currently incarcerated, we have 174. Among those arrested, Rosalind Ray Jefferson, 51-year-old female, Forest City, was charged with simple assault and City District Court judged for bond. Andrew Jacob Powell, 35-year-old male of Forest City, was charged with failure to comply with child support and received a $300 cash bond. Madeline Ashley Deck, a 29-year-old female of Rutherford, was charged with failure to appear and received a $1,000 secure bond. Isaiah O'Shawn Twitty, 22-year-old male of Forest City, was charged with failure to comply with child support and received a $400 cash bond. Ashley Michelle Hefner, 38-year-old female of Rutherford, was charged with larceny of a firearm, obtained property by false pretense, possession of firearm by felon, probation violation, and received a $150,000 secure bond. Jessica Ashley Fisher Boyd, 42-year-old female of Rutherford, was charged with 2 counts of felony failure to appear and received a $14,000 secure bond. Aaron Dag Epley, 25-year-old male of Forest City, was charged with possession of Schedule 2 narcotics and received a $5,000 secure bond. Daniel Allen Grimes, 37-year-old male of Popeville, was charged with assault on a female, did not have his bond information. Joseph Eugene Towery, 43-year-old male of Shelby, was charged with resist, obstruct, delay, and fictitious tag, received a written promise to appear. Shelby Danielle McKinney, 27-year-old female of Rutherford, was charged with failure to appear and received a $15,000 secure bond. Stanley Chris Walker, 63-year-old male of Ellenboro, was charged with assault on a female, received a $5,000 secure bond. William Curtis Reynolds, 32-year-old male of Forest City, was charged with 2 counts of failure to appear, received a $500 secure bond. Jayla Page Fowler, 20-year-old female of Morgan, was charged with larceny and received a $1,000 unsecured bond. Whitney Taylor McSwain, 31-year-old female of Rutherford, was charged with failure to appear and received a $500 secured bond. Among our incidents, we had a break-in and enter into a motor vehicle on Old Ballpark Road in Forest City. There was a pill bottle taken out of that vehicle. Shortly down the road, we had a larceny of a motor vehicle on Whitesides Road, Forest City. It was a 2012 Dodge Avenger. This vehicle was located in Spindale by the Spindale Police Department with no occupants in it. However, the stolen pill bottle from Old Ballpark Road was in the stolen motor vehicle from Whitesides Road. Another instance, we had a larceny on Cooper's Gap Road in Rutherford. It was a catalytic converter taken by $200. We had a larceny on Duncan Road, Rutherford. It was a 14-foot cattle gate by $250. We had a larceny Oakland Road to Dollar General. It was 5 Tide bottles, 5 Gain detergents, and 1 Bounty paper towel valued at $63 combined. Suspect was a black male with a white female. We got into a small blue car, still under investigation, and we had a larceny there on Old US 221A where a catalytic converter and 2 car batteries were taken out of a vehicle that had been stationary with some driving difficulties in a yard there. Jim, that's what I had to report today.
Sheriff, on these catalytic converters that are being stolen, so many of those, are they vendors selling those out of state somewhere, or are they selling them to somebody close by?
I think some of both. I think a lot of them, I think there's a middle person that they're selling to close by who's taking large numbers out of state to be able to get rid of those. We have recently had some laws passed to assist us in this, but we've got to get caught up with that new law that came in to play in December, and hopefully we'll be able to slow these down. But most of these vehicles are stationary with no tags on them, or their church vans.
Control your power. Control your business with a Generac automatic standby generator. Alternative Power is North Carolina's Generac generator experts. In fact, all Alternative Power does is provide backup power. Financing options are available. See more at alternativepower.com.
You or someone you know has been the victim of a crime. The North Carolina Department of Public Safety Office of Victim Services is here to provide support. The office provides a range of free, confidential services to help you regain yourself, receive compensation for damages incurred, protect yourself and your family, and move beyond the stigma of being victimized. Visit ncdps.gov/4victims. That's ncdps.gov/4victims.
Michigan men's basketball coach Juwan Howard has been suspended 5 games, which is the remainder of the regular season, and fined $40,000 for hitting Wisconsin assistant Joe Krabanoff in the face after Saturday's game. Wisconsin coach Greg Gard was fined $10,000 for violating the conference's sportsmanship policy, but not suspended. CBS basketball analyst Avery Johnson says the incident was bad for college basketball.
When you got 2 head coaches that didn't do enough to de-escalate this situation, you put student athletes in jeopardy, you put fans in jeopardy, security. So this was a no-no on both sides, and very.
It may be hard to find the sunshine in the coming days as an unsettled weather pattern kicked off yesterday afternoon that will likely continue into the weekend. May not see an abundant amount of sunshine until perhaps next Monday. So it's overcast today, windy and mild. There's a chance for some light rain, a high temperature in the mid to upper 60s. Tonight we have the chance for rain toward daybreak tomorrow. Otherwise, plenty of clouds, breezy and mild, upper 50s to low 60s the lows. I'm Mike Mays in the North Carolina News Network Weather Center.
It is still cloudy, overcast, and misty outside. And play Misty for me. Remember that movie, Play Misty for me? 53 degrees currently is where we are under cloudy skies. And be that way pretty much all day, today, tonight, tomorrow night, and the next day. So it's one of those weeks. So we have to make our own sunshine. Coming up 9:05 this morning, My Great America with Jim and Butch. It's on the docket to be aired this morning. It's getting rave reviews from around the neighborhood and across the Fruited Plain. So we hope you'll make plans to listen to that 9:05 this morning. Special guest on the program today, 9:05. Well, let's love some stories from here and there, some interesting stuff that don't hit the major newscast, but we try to present some. Sometimes stories that put a little smile on your face, some stories, but oh, wow, I can't believe that happened. This may be one of those put a smile on your face and, oh, man, I can't believe that story. Shock of a lifetime. Mom gives birth to natural quadruplets with 1 in 700,000 odds. Yeah. A Georgia mom who thought she was preparing for her second baby got the shock of her life when an 8-week ultrasound revealed rare, naturally conceived quadruplets. The quads, born at 28 weeks, are now 5 months old and thriving. Madison Collier of Marietta, Georgia, reflected, "I never thought it'd be me, but I really love it." The 34-year-old teacher said she was not on any fertility treatments and has no history of multiples in her family, so it's definitely the shock of a lifetime. Thinking her 8-week scan was just a routine appointment, Madison attended it all alone, unaware that she was going to get a huge surprise. She told the Epic Times, "I freaked out and started hyperventilating in the office and ended up calling her husband, Justin. He was very, very shocked. The couple who met in high school then broke the news to their 4-year-old daughter, Isla." Yes, they already had a 4-year-old. Madison said, "Do we have a plan for 4 babies?" And Justin told her, "No, we don't." She was like, "Well, we'll always have somebody to play with." Madison recalls her pregnancy with the quads as healthy, albeit painful, owing to the rate at which her body was stretched to accommodate 4 growing babies. The quads then gave a surprise to the parents by making their fast and furious entry into the world at 28 weeks. September 3rd, 2021, almost 3 months ahead of their due date of November 26th. Feeling a tightness after returning home from work, Madison headed to Northside Hospital in Atlanta with her husband, where doctors confirmed she was in labor. Efforts to subdue her contractions, however, didn't work. Babies Callaway, Eliza, Iris, and Wilder weighing between 2 pounds and 5 ounces and 2 pounds and 10 ounces, were born within minutes of one another. They were then placed on oxygen and feeding tubes in the NICU to help them gain some strength. The Colliers have not yet had testing done to confirm whether the babies are identical. The girls, to me, look really similar, said Madison. The boys, now that I'm getting to know them, seem a little different. It's possible that they're all fraternal, but again, it could have been the early split of an egg, which still could result in identical twins. That's one of those, oh, man, I can't believe that happened. That's a true story, folks, out of Georgia. True story. So they got quadruplets. I've got a picture of both him and her, and they got one in each arm, plus the little girl standing between them. The little girl's got a babysitting job ahead of her, doesn't she? My, what a story. Can you imagine? Those of you who've had babies, maybe you've had quadruplets. I don't know. Most of us don't know too many people with quadruplets in the family, but twins, yes, and sometimes triplets. All right, let's move on. There's a new documentary. Since yesterday was President's Day, there's a new documentary shedding light on George Washington's extraordinary life and his faith. Providence Forum Executive Director Jerry Newcomb said they aimed their guns at him, and by God's grace, he was spared. He had horses shot out from under him. He had 4 bullet holes in his cloak. In line with President's Day, the Providence Forum is releasing a new documentary on the extraordinary life of George Washington that puts an emphasis on his deep Christian faith. Titled George Washington, the film in one episode of the Foundation of American Liberties, a 7-part documentary series. If anyone asks me, this is a quote, if anyone asks me, well, what's the foundation of American liberties? It's our Judeo-Christian heritage. That's according to Providence Forum Executive Director Jerry Newcomb told CBN News. It's the fact that our founders said that our rights come from the Creator, and that has been the source of America's greatness. George Washington, as a man, was indispensable in helping create America. Washington, the country's first commander-in-chief, led a ragtag army of farmers and merchants to defeat the strongest military in the world. When he had the chance to rule, he pushed power away, refusing to be king. That particular example was one of a handful of very important examples of George Washington choosing the Christian type of leadership, servant leadership that he had. Newcomb says, God placed his hand on Washington early in life. In 1755, when he was a young man in his 20s, and he was an American officer in the British Army during the French and Indian War, and there was a massacre that occurred in which all the officers, the American and the British side, were killed except one. All were killed except one, and that was George Washington. They aimed their guns at him, and by God's grace, he was spared. He had horses shot out from under him. He had 4 bullet holes in his cloak, but he was spared for times such as that. The documentary special will air. It aired last night, but I'm sure they'll be airing this again on the NRB network, DirecTV channel 378. So watch out for the promotion of that. They did a lot of things for President's Day, and that was one of those things that was. I did not get to see it either. I wish I had been able to do that, but due to conflicts of schedule, can't do everything, can we? But while we're still there at George Washington, there Chuck Norris. You know who Chuck Norris is? He's a Texas Ranger. Chuck Norris. He's written a column for WorldNet Daily. And Chuck Norris, he's honoring the first president who believed in the power of grit, guns, and God, he says. What do you know about George Washington? Do you know the real Washington, or just the one that liberal academia and media want you to believe? Well, with February 21st being President's Day, that was yesterday, and February 22nd being today, the anniversary of the actual day George Washington was born, today's his birthday, I thought there was no better time to honor again what I consider one of the greatest leaders ever born anywhere. I want to give 10 facts about Washington liberal media and academia won't tell you. These are also actual 10 reasons I believe everyone should admire George Washington, no matter what their political persuasion is. Let me begin by highlighting a few bullets of background for some who might not be as familiar with this pillar of American life beyond the basics, as documented by the University of Virginia and the History Channel. According to Encyclopedia Virginia and History.com, on February 22nd, 1732, George Washington was born to a family of middling wealth in Westmoreland County, Virginia, the second son from the second marriage of a colonial plantation owner. In 1752, at 23 years young, George Washington joined the British Army and served as a lieutenant in the French and Indian War. In 1759, Washington married Martha Dandridge Custis, I guess it is, a wealthy widow, and adopted her two children. She had two other children, but they had passed. In 1775, at 43 years old, Washington became the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, and in 1783 led America to victory over the British after 8 years of war. As far as his political career, Washington served as a member of the House of Burgesses of Virginia from 1759 to 1774. He was also a member of the First and Second Continental Congress. But while others were signing the Declaration of Independence, Washington was already on battlefield fighting for independence. As the president of the Constitutional Convention, 1787, Washington was the first signer of the U.S. Constitution. In 1789, Washington became the first president of the United States of America. He was unanimously elected by the 69 presidential electors to serve his first term from 1789 to 1793. He was then again unanimously elected for a second term from 1793 to 1797. He declined a third term, although he was popular enough and could have won it. He returned a third term down. And here are the top 10 reasons why Chuck Norris, and I agree, that I think everyone should admire George Washington, and why I believe his life is still worthy to reflect today. These are also the reasons I often cited the father of America's words and works among our other founders in the New York Times bestseller, Black Belt Patriotism, How to Reawaken America. That's Chuck Norris. Number 10, when it came to decency, civility, and morality, Washington stood for conservative values. He believed in traditional faith, freedom, and family. Even as a youth, Washington was a role model for many. At just 14 years of age, young George wrote out in freehand on his own volition 110 rules of civility and decent behavior in company and conversation. At age 17, George's first official job was as a surveyor of Culpeper County, Virginia. Number nine, Washington believed in the power of grit, guns, and God. While others were frightened by signing the Declaration of Independence, Washington was on the front line battling for its tenets. He faced his fears, endured grave hardships, and even stared death in the eyes while helping others to do the same. Who can forget the severe conditions of Valley Forge? And what about the repeated threat of personal injury? Washington even dodged bullets on several occasions. The University of Virginia documents a few of them. At Braddock's defeat, where two horses were shot under him and he had 4 bullets in his clothes at the final skirmish of the Forbes expedition on November 12, 1758, where he rushed between two parties of British who were firing at each other. At Kip Bay's skirmish on September the 15th, where he exposed himself in an attempt to rally the militia. At the Battle of Princeton, January 3rd, 1777, and when making a reconnaissance of the British after the landing of the head of Elk on August 26, 1777. Number 8, why I think everyone should admire George Washington. Washington wasn't afraid of public opinion or challenging the status quo. He wasn't politically correct. History.com explained, quote, he struggled with advisors over what sort of image a president should project. He preferred one of dignity and humility and stumbled when encouraged to act out of character or monarchical. A member of the Virginia planter class, he grew increasingly uncomfortable with the hypocrisy of owning slaves, yet publicly he promoted a gradual abolition of slavery. In his will, he requested that his slaves be freed upon Martha's death. As far back as 1786, Washington said, there's not a man living who wishes more sincerely than I do to see a plan adopted for the abolition of slavery. Number 7. I'll rush through these, but because I know we got to move on. But anyway, number 7. Washington was cool, but could be hot-headed. A man of integrity and character, yet just as human as the rest of us. He could be stubborn to a fault and had a dry sense of humor. Again, History.com explained, Washington possessed that intangible quality of a born leader and had earned a reputation for coolness under fire and as a strict disciplinarian during the French and Indian campaign. An extraordinary figure in American history, and usually tall at 6'3", Washington was also an ordinary man. He loved cricket, loved fox hunting, moved gracefully around the ballroom, was a Freemason and possibly a deist, and was an astute observer of the darker side of human nature. His favorite foods were pineapples, Brazil nuts, hence the missing teeth from cracking the shells, and Saturday dinners of salt cod. He possessed a wry sense of humor, and like his wife Martha, tried to resist the vanities of public life. Washington could also explode into a rage when vexed in war or political battles. Loyal among almost to a fault, he could also be unforgiving and cold when crossed. When Republican Thomas Jefferson admitted to slandering the president in an anonymous newspaper article for his support of Federalist Alexander Hamilton's policy, Washington cut Jefferson out of his life. On at least one occasion, Washington's stubbornness inspired John Adams to refer to him as Old Muttonhead. Number 6. Washington didn't need power. He wasn't greedy. He was a first-class servant leader who walked what he talked. He believed so firmly in our newly founded but poor republic that he took no pay for his service during the Revolutionary War besides official expenses. And after 8 long years of leading the war and retiring to his peaceful estate at Mount Vernon, he re-enlisted rather than stay retired. It is amazingly commendable, if not astonishing, that Washington came out of the military retirement to serve 2 terms as president. He even had to borrow money to pay off debts and travel to his own inauguration. Number 5, Washington was passionately patriotic and believed in American exceptionalism. And he didn't allow personal obstacles or physical elements to hinder his service to God, country, and family. He wasn't looking for a free ride or an easy road. Beginning at age 17, Washington suffered multiple malaria attacks throughout his life. He even had a case of smallpox and dysentery, and he struggled with depression and hearing loss. 1779, during the middle of the Revolutionary War, Washington feared for his survival, not from bullets, but an abscess of the tonsils. After all he had been through at 57 years old with his war-torn body and reportedly a single real tooth in his mouth, Washington left behind the comfort of his estate on the edge of Potomac River and traveled 8 days to New York, where he was sworn in as president. Number 4, Washington was a devoted and traditional family man. 1759, at 27 years of age, Washington married widow Martha Dandridge Curtis. Though Martha and George had no children, he adopted her daughter and son from her former marriage. They also provided personal and financial support to nephews, nieces, and other extended family members. No doubt Martha had struggled to support Washington's departure as general and president, and imagine how she must have repeatedly worried about him and his welfare over the years on the battlefield. Imagine her relief as he finally came home from 8 years of leading the Revolutionary War, only to give him up again for the country's service as president. But Martha refused to attend his inauguration. She stood by her man, living with him at the temporary U.S. capital of New York and Philadelphia. Although they had a strong relationship, there's no doubt he had a lifelong love interest in the beautiful and intellectual, astute Sally Fairfax, the wife of his friend George William Fairfax, whom he had met when he was just 16 years of age. Sally's father would never allow her to marry someone other than from a wealthy upper class like her family, and Washington didn't fit that bill. Mount Vernon historians noted how Sally remained ever faithful to her marriage and yet a good friend of Washington and his wife. 1773, Sally moved with her husband to England, where he died in 1787, and in 1798, just a year before Washington's death, he wrote Sally, urging her to return to Virginia. He added that nothing could eradicate from my mind the recollection of those happy moments, the happiest in my life which I have enjoyed in your company. Sally never returned and died alone in England in 1811. George was married to Martha for roughly 40 years. Just prior to her own death in 1802, Martha understandably destroyed nearly all of Washington's letters to her, though 3 did survive. Regarding Sally Fairfax, no man is perfect, and that included George Washington. He himself confessed, "We must take human nature as we find it. Perfection falls not to the share of the mortals," remembering that was likely the key to his humility, service, and mercy to God, to others. Washington highly revered God and religion, often elevating their irreplaceable and invaluable roles in our republic. He signed into the Northwest Ordinance, which states, "Religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall never be encouraged." October 3rd, 1789, George Washington issued the first presidential Thanksgiving proclamation to God. Quote, a day of public thanksgiving and prayer to be observed by acknowledging with grateful hearts the many signal favors of Almighty God. Regarding Washington's often quoted practice of leaving church services before receiving the Eucharist, communion, maybe his own struggle was born from his wrestling with his own humanity and immoral thoughts of Sally Fairfax, or possibly even with the human toll that incurred when leading the war. His refusal to receive the Eucharist doesn't prove his unbelief in Christ, but rather supports it and his reverence for what the communion elements represented. That makes more sense to me than Paul F. Buller, respected presidential historian, who wrote in 1963, it cannot be said that Washington ever experienced any feeling of personal intimacy or communion with his God. That doesn't make as much sense as what I said earlier. For a true reflection of Washington's genuine Christian faith and intimacy with God, one must see at Washington's own Mount Vernon estate the museum's exhibit, display, and video. What you'll watch and read there is that he was passionate, a believer in Jesus Christ, as most Christians today. If only we taught about his religion, what is displayed at the museum, rather than trite comments that he was liberal, a deist, and not intimate with his Savior. In Washington opposed big government and big government spending, he led our nation with frugality and self-sacrifice, again refusing to accept pay as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. He was reluctant even to be paid as president, but was convinced by others it would be not be a good president for future presidents. So Congress gave Washington $25,000 a year, the largest salary in the U.S. for personal service at the time, 2% of the national budget. It should be noted that being president then didn't have the thousands of perks that come with the possession today, including a free mansion in which to live. For example, after staying for 16 months in New York, George and Martha rented a mansion in Philadelphia, the nation's capital, before D.C., where they lived from 1790 to 1797. Washington had to use his salary for both official duties and to maintain his personal affairs. Sure, he had lots of assets, but his liquidity didn't flow like the wealthy today. Remember, back then, there was no established national banking system. Bartering and oscillating state currencies and commodities were the names of the game until the Coinage Act, with the value of land fluctuating sharply based upon the weather and crop production. As the Atlantic put it, because there was no central banking system and no regulatory framework for commodities, markets were subject to panics in a way unknown today. Again, consider that at 57 years old, Washington even had to borrow money to pay off debts and to travel to his own inauguration. Washington died like he lived, gracefully and full of grits. In 1797, after winning the Revolutionary War and serving 2 presidential terms in office, Washington finally retired to Mount Vernon at 65 years of age, but he would only enjoy his rest for 2 years. On December 14, 1799, George Washington died of a severe respiratory sickness. His beloved Martha died only 3 years later, on May 22, 1802. In his will, he humbly and simply referred to himself as George Washington of Mount Vernon, a citizen of the United States and late president of the same. At first, the Washingtons were laid to rest in an inconspicuous, unmarked brick tomb at Mount Vernon, but their final resting place was in the crypt there that bears the title of him who refused to be king. The engraved words over the tomb make known the title by which people knew Washington best back then, not as president, but as general. The inscription reads, Within this enclosure rest the remains of General George Washington. And over the door of the inner tomb is inscribed these large words from Jesus himself in the Gospel of John 11:23. I am the resurrection and the life. Washington's good friend Henry Lee probably summarized his life, leadership, and legacy best in the eulogy for the first president, first in war, first in peace, and first in the heart of his countrymen. And so he remains, or should remain always. His type of character, integrity, and leadership were rare and desperately needed today, maybe even more so than they were in our republic's formation. During this week, we honor President's Day and Washington's own birthday. Please consider sharing stories like this on your social media. Look him up, do some research on him, and share it with those you love about the real George Washington. God, please give the U.S. more men and women like George and Martha Washington. And I'll be back in just a moment.
Get Vive's fiber-rich internet for only $25 a month for 105 meg. Plus, free install is available with AutoPay. That's right, internet for only $25 per month. Vibe can power all your devices, offers great local service, and includes a 30-day money-back guarantee. Visit VibeBroadband.com to sign up for internet starting at $25 per month. Offer ends 3/31/22. Not available in all areas. Modem taxes and fees extra. Visit VibeBroadband.com for additional restrictions.
Law enforcement is a tough job. Hello, I'm Theo, and I'm running for sheriff. I bring 20-plus years of experience. I'm the only candidate for sheriff that has served as a state trooper and federal agent. I would like to bring that experience into the county I love and want to protect. I am a tough on-crime law enforcement officer, and when elected, I am committed to shutting down the drug houses and making our county safe for our kids and grandkids again. I would like the opportunity to meet you and answer any questions you have. Let's win this battle together. Vote for Theo for Sheriff, Tuesday, May 17th. Paid for by Steve Theodoropoulos, Republican for Sheriff.
For a delicious meal every day, call on Gregory's Original. Choose from their top menu of burgers, subs, grinders, pasta dishes, fresh salads, and so much more. All dishes are prepared fresh daily. Hours are Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. until 9 p.m., Saturday, noon until 9 p.m. Now at Gregory's, try the family-style meals. The dining room is now open, but curbside and takeout is still available. Enjoy lunch or dinner today with your favorite meal from Gregory's. Call 287-2171, located in the Park Lane Plaza in Rutherford's Gregory's Original.
Saving money is easy when you shop at Jay's Discount Grocery. From snack foods to vegetables, fresh fruits to fresh cut meats, paper products, cleaning supplies, dog food, and so much more. You know, you just never know what you'll find at Jay's. So shop and save today. They're located at 671 Oak Street in Forest City, right beside the Hospice Resale Store. You know, when you shop at Jay's, you always walk out with money left over in your pocket.
Well, as you know, on this President's Week, yesterday was President's Day, and all week long we're celebrating presidents of history. And many of you know who listen to this program often, Abraham Lincoln was my favorite of history. The things he went through and did for our country, including abolition of slavery and saving our union, but so many other things. But I learned so much about George Washington doing this research for this story that makes me appreciate our first president even more as a general as well as president of the United States of America, to be the first one ever. So I hope you will spend a little time doing some research about some of the other presidents along the way do not have the reputation that George Washington had, or Abraham Lincoln, or some of the others, or even Ronald Reagan. But it is interesting to see the kind of thing when you go back and see what they really focused on in their life as the important thing, not money, not wealth, but building a great country. Thank you, George Washington, for your leadership. Now I got to break a loose here and get ready for My Great America with Jim and Butch coming up. That sounds like a story for My Great America. Butch always has some great historical stuff to talk about. He has a special guest with us this morning we'll be talking about. So let's get that, and we'll do that in just a few minutes. Stand by.